Fatalvatu tātou tunu I ne vanga le fiafi le o tātou tonu mai o le tātou polkalam masani fo il nei ma o le tātou polkalam mai. E le tele ni mta upu ala tala noinga. Ai faisi umi lai titi o le tala noinga o nei mta upu. Wa mwhai o na maua se so teinga tu sao a le talatala le taui le nei fiafi whai ngā malanga le fionga ko vana ma le au malanga na malanga atu. Ia ma leo fiafi leo fifia e whalau do atu. Ia o leo ua mawhai o na maua le whilo inga ma le sunga ia Barney Sene o le whatonu o le matanga ruenga wafu ma malai wa lele le tātu o tunu. Ia ua mawhai o na ia tu whaatasia se reporti e tu ina mai. Ia tu sai foi o le finangalo le fionga tamao le tunu. Ina ia maua ile nei so ta inga nei po mai fifia whawhelo i atu I lau sunga Barney Sene. Good evening, Director. I know it's a little bit after 2 o'clock, 2 a.m. in Chicago right now. And I would like to switch things over to you to say a few words for our viewers and our listeners tonight before I ask a few questions on our show.
Yeah, talo fatau. It's great to be on your program here and to provide information with regards to meetings that we've been out here in D.C. and as they also move over to Hawaii as well. So,
thank you, Barney. I believe the Governor Pula'ali'i Nikolao Pula appointed you to be his representative in the round of meetings on Sunday afternoon and yesterday and today as well, before he left early for his Washington trip to be in the U.S. territories and Hawaii's meeting with the Department of War yesterday and today. Tell us about your experience from those meetings and what did the governor and your team of directors traveling with him or your delegations manage to grab to benefit American Samoa?
Oh, thank you for the question. So there were essentially 3 types of meetings at a minimum. But there were 3 meetings that were held in D.C. It's the interagency group of insular areas, which includes American Samoa, Guam, Saipan, and the Virgin Islands. So we had meetings, and this appears to be a meeting that occurs once a year with the Secretary of Interior to have the territories voice any concerns or progress. It's more of a report, if you like to define it that way. And the meeting, Secretary Doug Burgum attended that as well. We did have earlier meetings. Our meetings actually started on Tuesday of last week after the holidays with the Department of Interior. And then on Wednesday, we had the intergroup on insular areas meeting with the Secretary of Interior. Those meetings ended up drilling further down in terms of some of the concerns and things that the territories may have had. In attendance were not just the governors from the territories, the 4 territories, but it was also the congresswomen or congressmen from their respective territories as well. So our congresswoman was also in attendance in these meetings that occurred with the group of insular areas. We also had the Republican Governors Association meeting that occurred on Thursday, and then basically the National Governors Association meeting was on Friday and Saturday, and then on Sunday, the governor and part of our group headed over to Honolulu for more detailed talks that were held there yesterday, Monday, as well as today, Tuesday. And those were primarily focused around forging strategic Pacific partnerships with what is going on in the South Pacific areas. In particular, things around deep sea mining. As some of you may be aware, the Cook Islands is further ahead on deep sea mining and what they're doing there, but also in terms of things that impact us. The CEO from Azteca was there as well, and there were some other representatives that attended in those meetings there in Honolulu. But primarily, I stayed behind in D.C. to meet with the Deputy Secretary of Interior to further some of the discussions we needed to have with regards to our seaports, as well as with our airport, and in particular the airport tower. And this is not a new issue. This was an issue that was brought up way back in the early 2000s when former Governor Konyola was also fighting for us to get a tower restored back in Pango. We did have a tower in the mid 80s and 90s, and then that was removed, and all of the tower control activities were transitioned over to Faleolo Airport. So one of the key topics that came out of our insular group conversations, and it was a topic that got brought up also by our representative Amata in the meetings, that we do need to go back and bring our tower back into Pango due to safety, due to security, and also due to essentially our just protecting our borders. It's really what it comes down to, right? So the tower issue has been also not just an issue that has been percolating out there. When I first took over and came into taking over this role as director of port administration, even the president of the Senate had brought this up to me. That was his first concerns in February of last year. And then the House of Representatives also had a resolution that was issued with regards to the tower and support of moving that, or at least instituting and getting funding to build a tower in American Samoa. So that's around the tower part. And then obviously on the infrastructure side, part of the meetings I had yesterday was also with regards to the Maritime Administration, which is part of the Department of Transportation, which they handle a lot of the what I refer to as ports and infrastructure there in terms of how we can obtain funding and so forth. So that's pretty much a brief sort of outline in terms of the meetings that were held out here in the United States.
So for all those meetings, Governor and your team, especially the one you left behind to participate, is there any? What are the benefits for the territory of American Samoa, Barney?
Yeah, and I think what it is if you look at last year when the Trump administration came into office as well, there was a lot of sorting out of things. There was the big, beautiful bill that got passed in July of last year that actually created an opportunity to have more funding in the Defense Department and so forth. So going into this fiscal year, which started in October, there's now a little bit more clarity in terms of what the territories need. So I would say that these meetings are basically more of continue that dialogue and conversation to basically put in front of the new administration, which is not new. It's a year now in, and there's a lot of conversation. There's a lot of things that they're focusing on. But our priorities for American Samoa is to put us back on focus, that we're not just a territory that's out in the South Pacific, south of the equator, and we're supposed to be ignored. So it's more around basically getting back and putting ourselves in front and center in terms of a lot of the conversations that are going on. So a lot of the conversations also have to do with what's going on in the Pacific with China and so forth. And what is the U.S. military doing to essentially protect us in where we are located at in case of a war. And there's been a lot of talk about, the upcoming war, what China is expected to do in the next 2 years to potentially take over Taiwan. So where do we stand? So that's one portion of it. The other part is also fisheries. If you look at the Chinese fishing fleet, it is a large fleet that is all around the South Pacific. China just doesn't use those as fishing boats. They are also part of their guard. So when there is a crisis around the world, those vessels are used as basically guard vessels, as we've seen that in Asia as well. So there's a lot of that that's going on. Our EZ zone is not protected. We don't have a Coast Guard down, basically a vessel, basically stationed out in Pango. So there's a lot of concerns about that. There is a ramp up of what I refer to as mining of materials in the Cook Islands, which is actually moving much faster. They are roughly about 6 years ahead of us, but they're progressing very rapidly on that. So what is China going to do in that scenario where those rare earth materials, who's protecting it, really what it comes down to. But getting back to really what it comes down to, at the end of the day, it's all about funding. It's all about money. So our trip here was primarily to begin the dialogue, basically in terms of what are our priorities? What do we need in American Samoa from the federal government? Our ARPA funds are going to end the end of this year. So after our ARPA funds, what else do we have other than normal grants that we would apply to, year by year? We're not going to get a major injection of money like ARPA came about. So now we need to really go after large buckets of money, money that would help basically mitigate our wharf, which, as I mentioned to you in one of your last programs as well, our wharf life, if we don't mitigate that with more money, we are likely to see our port collapse into the ocean. Now, how important is that port to the military? How important is that to us? And these are the kind of conversations that we're having today with the Department of Defense as well as the Department of Transportation, so we can at least get funding to mitigate and also build up our port infrastructure. The airport tower is important as well because it's our sovereignty that we're talking about, right? When you look at this, we're the only airport that I know of, U.S. airport, that is managed airspace-wise by a foreign country. Even though we know, independent Samoa, they're our cousins, obviously. But in the scheme of things, we don't know who's managing their infrastructure. Some of the equipment could be Chinese. There are military planes that come into Pango. Managing and knowing what airplanes come in, that's type of information that is valuable to a foe when it comes to war and so forth. So these are some of the conversations we're having right now, as well as just literally looking for money now to grow our economy. And I think this is where the governor really is pushing towards. We need to build the private sector. The government is the largest employer and so forth. And it's not sustainable. We need to shift to build the private sector because a large government really ends up not having a good tax base. You need to basically build up the private tax base. And so creating new jobs, looking at opportunities in that area is really what we're also pushing through. So it's a big conversation. It's a lot of things that are going on. Most of it is driven by the different departments, like the Director of Commerce, she's driving that too. We're driving it in port from the developments we're doing, in the airport areas as well, so it can benefit the economy long-term wise. So.
Thank you, Barney. Did our Congresswoman Aumua Amata, Wifatali Aumua Amata, join you guys in all these conversations with the federal government? And will you please elaborate more on the Coast Guard participation in American Samoa in the future?
Yes, so last year we started looking at what we're missing infrastructure-wise in American Samoa. So it was basically riding off of what Congresswoman Amata had driven over the last couple of years. As you're aware, Amata has always been pushing to bring or base Coast Guard cutters down in American Samoa. So we have teamed up to continue that effort. Congresswoman Amata had, in the session we had last week, had brought up two major things. The Coast Guard cutter, we need cutters down in American Samoa, based in American Samoa, not just visit from Hawaii. We need them based in American Samoa to basically patrol our easy zone and areas around us. We're lacking that protection that normal territories and states would have. The second part that Congresswoman Amata also pushed heavily on was our air traffic control tower. So these are the two things that she has pushed up. I'm 100% with her on these, and we're jointly working together to, basically navigate through the federal government, right? Whether there's legislation that she needs to push through and other triggers that we're looking to talk to our counterparts with the Department of Transportation, Department of War, Homeland Security, and so forth, to at least get these two things in order, right? Because these are two things that we really need immediately today, from a safety, from a security, and essentially from just the principle of we're not able to protect ourselves, right? So.
One of the question I would like to ask is the fact that while you guys are in Washington making all this conversation with the federal government, have you guys discussed the going forward or the moving forward of the deep seabed mining? Because some members of the public are very concerned of the two ferries already in American Samoa waters to do some research or study in our waters. Can you talk about that?
So we did have a good conversation with BOEM and the Interior Department as well. So, just for awareness, American Samoa controls our shorelines up to 3 miles. Anything past that is actually federal. And so we really don't have much to say there when we're past the 3 mile segment in our easy zone. That's really driven by the federal government. Now, we can influence the federal government. That's the key word, influence, and hopefully direct them in the right direction we need to. But we can't stop what the federal government's going to do. Now, the vessels that are there in Pango right now, their job is basically to survey the seabed. And it's never been done thoroughly in American Samoa. So I want everybody to understand this, right? There's benefits from basically having these vessels basically survey our entire EZ area and so forth. So we know what's down below there. That's the first thing. Information is very important, so everybody understands that, right? We don't want to be naive walking into things like this. So that information, and this is from meetings that we had in Washington last week with BOEM. So once all of that surveying work is completed, the information will be then provided publicly for all of us to see what's underneath the seabed. And then from there, we can then, influence the decisions of, what we want to do. Now, in terms of deep sea mining, the governor, the representative Amata, as well as the other territories like Guam and Saipan are obviously against it, right? That's the official position right now, and that's essentially where everybody stands right now. So deep sea mining is not something that everybody's for, but they're open to understand the process and as well as what is underneath the sea that we have. We don't know what's underneath there. We can only think about it, and speculate. But from my perspective, I'm an engineer, and from my perspective, you can't make decisions until you have good, accurate data to know what's there, and then from there you can make the right decisions. But I can tell you, the federal government is interested to hear, our voices. They're not going to jump. The whole process of deep sea mining, if it ever happens in our waters and so forth, that's going to be a long process. That's probably going to be 5-6 years out, right? So this process is just more of a discovery to just understand what's there, right? There could be many things we don't know. Who knows, right? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, there could be gold down there. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but you know, but who knows? So we need to at least get the data and understand what's underneath there first, and then from there, once we see the data, we can go to the next step of seeing what we need to do next. But it is my understanding, sitting in these meetings that were held, that BOEM, which is the government agency that's driving this, is all around providing information so we can all make the right decisions in terms of where we want to go.
The Trump administration got the funding for public health as well as education department. Did Pula and your delegation discuss that with the federal government?
So I wasn't in those conversations because my focus was primarily on the port facilities and any of the major infrastructures. But I know we've had the other directors in our team who were part of our group that came out here. We're also looking at all of those areas of funding. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time, Barney, with us tonight, and wish you all the best. I believe you are in Chicago right now, and it's too late. It's too late at night, and it's early mornings at where you are speaking to us from. And thank you very much for the time, and hope to discuss with the governor more details of your delegations to meet with the federal government in Washington, D.C. and Hawaii as well. Your final words, Barney?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Hopefully these meetings, and I think this is just the beginning of more meetings. I tend to be very conservative in how I approach meetings like this. I don't want everybody to assume that, you know, we're coming back with a bucket of money. This is a process that we all need to go through to start these conversations so we can get to what we need. So in the future, there will be a few more, but I think we're basically chipping away with the federal agencies. Basically, the awareness of the importance of where we are and what we mean to the United States, that's been made continuously clear. Now we're looking at pulling in those benefits. So some of these things, obviously, we need to put the proposals and all of the other stuff in place. And obviously, when we're asking for money, we're not asking for a small change. We're asking for a lot of money that basically some of the states will look at this, or the territories, and wonder why we're asking for this and for what reason. So we'll continue to push our case forward on this, but we're making progress in terms of the direction we need to be at.
Thank you very much, Director Barney, for the opportunity to talk with us tonight. Have a good morning and safe travel on your return home.
Thank you.
Yeah, now fa fonga yel tanto tunu